I get so irritated is the wrong word, angry, when I find out that people take advantage of the American people's generosity. It makes me want to knee someone in the groin. It just makes me furious. We're trying to put together a budget right now, and we've got state officials in Minnesota, because they wanted votes, that are allowing people in their state who are crooks to steal $1 billion from the American taxpayer, money that could have gone to people who really were homeless, and children who really were hungry, and kids who, through no fault of their own, really were autistic, instead of stolen, a portion of which allegedly was sent to a terrorist organization in Somalia.
Imagine spending your entire life working. You wake up before sunrise. You put in long hours. You pay your taxes because you believe they're helping people who genuinely need it. A hungry child, a homeless family, a child living with a disability. Now, imagine learning that prosecutors say some of that money never reached those people at all. Instead, investigators allege it became part of one of the biggest public benefit fraud cases America has ever seen. And when Senator John Kennedy read the details, he couldn't believe what he was looking at.
I get so irritated is the wrong word, angry, when I find out that people take advantage of the American people's generosity. It makes me want to knee someone in the groin. It just makes me furious. And I think the American taxpayers feel the same way.
America has always taken pride in helping people through hard times. Whether it's feeding children, helping families find housing, or paying for medical care, billions of taxpayer dollars are set aside every year with one goal: helping people get back on their feet. That system depends on one thing: trust. Trust that every dollar collected from taxpayers ends up helping someone who actually needs it. According to federal prosecutors, that's not what happened in Minnesota. They say investigators uncovered a massive fraud operation that stretched across several years and involved programs designed to help society's most vulnerable. The total? Nearly $1 billion. That's not just a big number. It's almost impossible to picture. Imagine spending $1 million every single day. It would still take nearly 3 years to spend $1 billion. That's the amount prosecutors say was tied to multiple fraud schemes. But here's what makes this story even harder to believe. Investigators say it didn't begin with some complicated Wall Street investment or an international cyber attack. It started with something almost everyone supports: feeding hungry children.
They had 3 very elaborate schemes. The first scheme was centered on supposedly feeding hungry children in the Somali community. A group, a nonprofit run by some people with Somali ancestry. The name of the nonprofit was called Feeding Our Future. Feeding Our Future went to the welfare authorities in the state of Minnesota, which of course was administering federal taxpayer money. Feeding Our Future said, we want to feed hungry children in the Somali community. And the welfare people in state government in Minnesota gave them the money to do that. It started out very small, but the idea was that Feeding the Future, the Somali nonprofit organization, would take this federal taxpayer money, American taxpayer money, and go to businesses, most of which were Somali businesses in the Somali community, and set up feeding sites where they supposedly would take children to get a hot meal. On paper, it sounded great.
On paper, the program sounded like a perfect idea. A nonprofit organization would receive government funding. That money would be used to provide meals for children who needed them most. Simple, compassionate, exactly the kind of program taxpayers expect their money to support. At first, the funding was relatively small, nothing unusual. But prosecutors say something changed. The requests for money kept getting bigger. More feeding sites appeared. More reimbursements were requested. More taxpayer dollars flowed into the program. Until eventually, according to investigators, The organization was receiving around $100 million every year. Every year. That should have been enough to feed an enormous number of children. But prosecutors say there was one major problem. Many of those meals allegedly never existed. Instead, investigators allege much of the money was diverted for personal luxury purchases. Expensive homes, jewelry, vacations, luxury vehicles, even yachts. Think about that for a second. Money meant to buy school lunches, allegedly paying for luxury lifestyles instead. That's the moment this stopped looking like ordinary fraud. It became something much bigger.
There were no hungry children. There were hungry children. They just weren't getting any of the money. And the businesses, many of which were Somali owned, which were getting some money to feed the children from Feeding Our Future, the nonprofit that was quarterbacking this whole thing, they weren't giving any of the money to hungry children. They were spending it. These businesses were spending it on yachts and vacations and jewelry and furniture for their home.
For most scandals, that would be the headline. One fraudulent program, millions of dollars, a handful of arrests, case closed. But prosecutors say this wasn't one isolated scheme. It was a pattern. And once investigators started pulling on the thread, everything else began unraveling. The next program focused on housing, helping people who had nowhere else to go. Once again, the proposals sounded exactly like what government assistance should look like. Funding would help provide housing for homeless families. The request started small, a few $1,000,000, nothing that would immediately raise alarms. Then they grew and grew. Within only a few years, prosecutors say the funding requests exploded into the tens of millions, eventually climbing to more than $100 million a year. If someone asked you to borrow $10, you probably wouldn't think twice. If they came back asking for $10,000, you'd probably start asking questions. That's exactly what many people are asking now. How did requests like these continue growing year after year? And according to prosecutors, the answer becomes even more disturbing in the next chapter of this story. Because investigators say the biggest scheme of all wasn't about food. It wasn't about housing. It involved children with autism. And that's where this story takes its darkest turn. The autism program is where prosecutors say this case crossed another line. Helping children with autism isn't just another government program. For many families, it's the difference between getting life-changing therapy or going without it. That's why what investigators allege happened next shocked so many people. According to prosecutors, some providers struggled to find enough children who qualified for the program. So instead of lowering their claims, they allegedly expanded them another way. Investigators say some parents were offered cash if they agreed to have their children falsely classified as autistic. If those allegations are true, this wasn't just about stealing taxpayer money anymore. It meant exploiting a program built for children who genuinely needed help.
They came up with a third scheme. This one makes you want to throw up in a potted plant. This one's centered around autistic children. Once again, in this third program, a group of providers, supposedly medical providers, got together and they went to the welfare authorities in Minnesota and said, "We need money to help autistic children." You say, well, that's a wonderful thing to do. And then these providers, once the welfare department at the state government in Minnesota gave them the okay, they went out and started recruiting autistic children. You say, well, okay, we have to get the word out somehow. But they couldn't find very many autistic children. So they started going to parents in the Somali community and saying, can we call your child autistic? Can we certify that your child is autistic? If you'll let us do that, We'll pay you a bribe from $400 to $1,500 a child.
Every major fraud case has a pattern. And according to prosecutors, this one was no different. The requests always started small, just enough to avoid attention. Then they grew. $3 million, $54 million, $77 million, then $183 million. Eventually, the requests climbed to nearly $400 million in a single year. Think about that. Not over a decade, not over the lifetime of the program. In just 1 year. That's when investigators say the numbers became impossible to ignore. By the time prosecutors pieced everything together, they alleged the total amount tied to these different fraud schemes had reached nearly $1 billion. $1 billion that was supposed to help children, families, and people with nowhere else to go. Instead, prosecutors allege much of it disappeared in a fraud. But here's the question that changes this entire story. How does something this big happen without somebody noticing? Surely, someone inside government had to see the warning signs. And according to Senator Kennedy, some people did.
All total, in these 3 fraud schemes, these crooks stole $1 billion of taxpayer money. And here's I started to say worst part, but let me amend it. Equally bad part. You say, well, hello, how could this happen? Why didn't the people in the Department of Social Services and the Welfare Department in state government, when they saw these claims arising, why didn't they say something? Didn't they go out and check these businesses that were supposedly sites to feed homeless children? Didn't they go talk to some of the children and their parents to see if some of the children really were autistic? Didn't the state authorities go out and say, can you show us one of the homes that you're providing to the homeless people? After all, we're spending $1 billion. They didn't, because the politicians wouldn't let them.
Imagine reviewing paperwork every day and suddenly seeing millions of dollars turning into hundreds of millions. Most people would stop everything, ask questions, request audits, start checking records. According to Kennedy, that's exactly what some government employees tried to do. He says workers inside the system became suspicious as the claims kept growing. So they started looking closer. And what happened next may be one of the most controversial parts of the entire speech. According to Kennedy, when officials tried slowing the payments, some of the organizations pushed back hard. He says they threatened lawsuits. He says they warned officials they would face accusations of discrimination if the money stopped flowing. Whether those legal arguments had merit is a separate question. But Kennedy argues the pressure worked. Instead of becoming more aggressive, government agencies became more cautious.
Employees in the welfare office started getting suspicious when the claims went up, and they contacted Feeding Our Future. And they said, hey, what's going on here? You know, we're going to start cutting off these claims because it's getting a little bit expensive. And you know what Feeding Our Future did? They threatened the employees. They said, if you cut off our money, they sent them an email, and they did it by phone. They told the state agency that failing to promptly approve new applicants from minority-owned businesses would result in a lawsuit, feeding accusations of racism that would be scrawled across the news, sprawled across the news. Feeding Our Futures went to the state and said, if you stop giving us this money, we're going to call you racist and we're going to sue you. And you don't want to be in the news.
Then came the biggest question of all. If employees were raising concerns, why wasn't somebody higher up listening? According to Kennedy, frontline workers weren't the problem. He says many of them did exactly what taxpayers would expect. They documented concerns. They alerted supervisors. They reported suspicious activity. The senator argues the breakdown happened after those warnings reached leadership. He points to investigators and public reports suggesting political concerns may have influenced how aggressively officials responded. Those claims remain heavily debated. But Kennedy's conclusion is simple. He believes the warning signs were there. He believes people spoke up. And he believes stronger action should have been taken much sooner.
One of the other witnesses in the fraud investigation said, look, I told the prosecutors, let me just give you a cold dish of truth. The 80,000 voting bloc of folks with Somali ancestry, you got to have their votes to win in Minneapolis. And if you're a Democrat, you can't win Minneapolis, you can't win in the state. So the politicians did nothing.
And just when you think the story couldn't get any bigger, one final allegation pushes it into international headlines. According to Kennedy, investigators also examined reports alleging that some of the allegedly stolen money may have eventually reached the Somalia-based terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Kennedy makes clear in his speech that investigators were still trying to determine whether that allegation was true. It had not been proven in court, but he argues that if even a small portion of taxpayer money ended up funding extremists, the consequences would reach far beyond financial fraud.
Part of this $1 billion that was stolen, they are alleging that at least a portion of it went to a terrorist organization in Somalia that we've all heard of. It's notorious. It's an organization called Al-Shabaab. They hate Americans. They're terrorists. They want to kill Americans and drink their blood out of a boot.
Kennedy ends with one message. This story isn't just about one state, or one program, or even $1 billion. It's about trust. Every taxpayer believes that money collected in their name will help people who actually need it. When that trust is broken, the damage goes far beyond money. Because once people stop believing the system can protect their tax dollars, every future program is questioned. Every future promise is doubted. And every honest family that truly needs help pays the price. Whether you're interested in politics or not, that's a question worth thinking about.
We're trying to put together a budget right now. And we've got state officials in Minnesota, because they wanted votes, that are allowing people in their state who are crooks to steal $1 billion from the American taxpayer. Money that could have gone to people who really were homeless, and children who really were hungry, and kids who, through no fault of their own, really were autistic, instead of stolen, a portion of which allegedly was sent to a terrorist organization in Somalia. Man, these people ought to all be put in jail, including the politicians. Makes me want to stick my head in an oven.
If you enjoy hearing breakdowns that cut through the noise and get straight to the facts, make sure you subscribe. We post the biggest moments from Washington with context, not just clips. And if you found this story surprising, wait until you see what happened in the next hearing.